Hi, this is Mark Birch with a quick revision of John Donne's selected poems. And here we're going to be taking a look at Twicknam Garden, first of all thinking about its context. The first thing to recognise is that Twickenham Park, with those famous gardens, was the home of Lucy, Countess of Bedford, a married patroness of Donne's poetry. So both of those elements are going to be significant to the poem. The fact that she was his patroness, and therefore he would be needing to flatter her, and secondly that she was married. Also, the poem's an ironic treatment of a common Petrarchan theme, an unrequited love contrasted with the beauty of nature. Here, Donne presents a lover who finds the beauty of nature a mocking force, given that the persona feels ill-treated as a result of his beloved's faithfulness to her husband or lover. So let's take a look at the poem itself. Blasted with sighs and surrounded with tears, hither I come to seek the spring. And at mine eyes and at mine ears receive such balms as else cure everything. But oh, self-traitor, I do bring the spider love which transubstantiates all, and can convert manna to gall. And that this place may thoroughly be thought true paradise, I have the serpent brought. 'Twere wholesomer for me that winter did benight the glory of this place, and that a grave frost did forbid these trees to laugh and mock me to my face. But that I may not this disgrace endure, nor yet leave loving, love, let me some scentless piece of this place be. Make me a mandrake, so I may grow here, or a stone fountain weeping out my year. Hither with crystal phials, lovers come, and take my tears, which are love's wine, and try your mistress's tears at home, for all are false that taste not just like mine. Alas! Hearts do not in eyes shine, nor can you more judge women's thoughts by tears than by her shadow what she wears. O perverse sex, where none is true but she, who's therefore true because her truth kills me. The poem contains a number of biblical allusions. Garden itself could refer to the Garden of Eden or the Garden of Gethsemane, the site of Jesus' agony in the garden, or moment of self-criticism before his crucifixion. But that sense of self-doubt and self-criticism found in this biblical allusion is evident throughout the poem. The poetic voice's pain is conveyed through the hyperbolic and reflexive effect of their pain. The semantic field of battle is employed to convey the way in which he's attacked by his own suffering, blasted with sighs and surrounded with tears. Those key words, blasted and surrounded, convey the extent of the pain, foregrounding that pain at the beginning of the poem with the powerful plosive b. And that power is complemented by the stress on the initial b, created by the use of the trochaic meter. The poetic voice seeks solace in the garden from the wintry weather implied by his emotional extremes. Blasted with sighs and surrounded with tears suggest the harsh winds and rains of winter that would be alleviated by the spring. Balms here are these kind of soothing lotions. But given the pain suffered by the poetic voice, he's represented as seeking relief in the garden, which seems to offer a mythical cure-all. Its beauty has restorative powers. And the sensory nature of the cure and its overwhelming nature is captured by the syntactic parallelism of at mine eyes and at mine ears. The sense of harmony captured by the parallelism represents the harmony afforded by the garden, which could cure the poetic voice's pain. But the poetic voice recognizes that he denies himself the consolation of the garden. His use of the exclamative "oh" conveys his despair. That this is his own fault is powerfully captured by the use of the phrase self-traitor. Describing love as a metaphorical spider captures a variety of negative connotations. Spiders are associated with death, and the Elizabethans believed that spiders transformed everything they ate into poison. Donne seems to be drawing upon this belief in his reference to transubstantiates. Transubstantiation is the Catholic concept of the Eucharist's bread and wine transforming into the body and blood of Christ. So spider love seems to be an inversion of this, transforming everything not into life and hope, but to poison and death. Donne develops the religious imagery of the transubstantiation through the concept of converting manna to gall. Manna refers to the bread-like food miraculously provided for the Israelites while they were traversing the wilderness. It also alludes to the nourishment provided during the Eucharist, but again, it's transformed into something bitter and poisonous, gall. Religious symbolism presented through the conceit of transubstantiations further developed through the reference to true paradise, the Garden of Eden. And the Garden of Eden was ruined by the work of the serpent that ultimately sowed the seeds of temptation that exiled Adam and Eve from paradise. That serpent is often associated with the devil. So Donne's representing the poetic voice as transforming the paradise of Twicknam Garden into a place of temptation and mistrust as a result of his own unrequited and damnable desires. Donne introduces the serpent with sibilant sounds that could capture the hissing of the serpent. The second stanza returns to the seasons, with the poetic voice believing that it would be better for him if the garden was in the dead of winter than the spring that he sought in the first stanza. He uses words like, "It were wholesomer, it would be better for him if the winter did benight the glory of this place, shroud it in darkness." Because rather than a dead place that suits his mood, the poetic voice faces a personified garden where the trees laugh at him. The vitality of the garden mocks his lifelessness, a state that he exists in as a result of his unrequited love. Donne presents the poetic voice as wishing to avoid the disgrace of this unrequited love, but he appeals to a personified love to allow him to remain part of the garden, an unfeeling part that's nevertheless close to his love, given that it is her garden. The alliteration of the long "l" in leave, loving, love, let could convey the length of time that the poetic voice wishes to remain senseless in the garden. This unrequited love is so profound that he wishes to remain close to his unrequited love forever. Initially, the poetic voice proposes that love should transform him into a mandrake, a plant that's appropriate given the mythical belief that the plant would groan or scream when pulled from the ground, and therefore it mirrors the poetic voice's pain. There's some textual dispute over the word grow in this line. Some versions of the poem use groan, but both of those possibilities work in terms of the poetic voice continuing to exist in this place associated with his love. The desire to be senseless, with all painful feelings removed, is evident in the desire for the poetic voice to be chromomorphically represented as a stone fountain. Stone is a conventional symbol of lifelessness. But Donne maintains the focus on emotional pain by representing the poetic voice's tears as the water from this fountain. The hyperbolic image conveys the profound nature of the emotional excess experienced by the poetic voice, as the tears will be shed continuously, just as the water from the fountain is continuously sent forth. In the final stanza, Donne maintains that conceit of the fountain, this time suggesting that lovers will make a pilgrimage to the site of the fountain in order to take a sample of his tears. The poetic voice's tears are metaphorically referred to as love's wine. They're desirable, valuable, and nourishing because they're the product of pure love. This may also function as another reference to the Eucharist, as alluded to in stanza 1. The value of the tears is evident in the vessels used to collect them. Crystal vials are expensive, decorative items used to celebrate the value of their contents, and here that valuable content is his tears. Donne suggests that these lovers should take away their crystal vials and compare the poetic voice's tears with those of their mistresses. If the tears are not of the same vintage as his own, then the love of the mistress must be false. The poetic voice's tears are presented as an ideal standard for love to be measured against, an almost platonic ideal. And Donne goes on then to present a negative representation of women that mirrors the disenchantment of the poetic voice. Once again, the profound emotions evident in the use of the exclamative, alas! His despair is that women don't display the same emotion as men. Eyes are not the windows to the soul in women. Donne uses negation to suggest that women can manipulate the presentation of their emotions. But this again, remember, is from the perspective of the poetic voice, someone who's experiencing this unrequited love, and the bitterness is the bitterness of a rejected persona. The metonym hearts to represent the emotions are not found in the eyes of women because such emotions are hidden. So we're getting the poetic voice representing the deceitfulness of women, which is conveyed by the simile of women's tears being as unreliable a testament of her emotions as her shadow is of her clothing. It's impossible to detect the basis of one in the other. The perverse nature of the situation, and of women in general according to the poetic voice, is that none of them are true or faithful. Aside from the poetic voice's beloved. The irony is that she's faithful to her husband rather than to the poetic voice. Her faithfulness kills him. Now, the poem could be argued to be an attempt to flatter Donne's patroness rather than being a misogynistic outpouring of self-pity. Donne devotes much of the poem to glorifying the Countess of Bedford's garden, presenting his profound love for her and recognising that she's distinguished among women because of her faithfulness. And so, onto the structure. In terms of the stanzas, we've got 3 9-line stanzas. There's a rhyme scheme of A, B, A, B, B, C, C, D, D. And there are lines composed of both pentameter or tetrameter. The stress pattern, however, is irregular. So you could argue that the structure conveys an overall sense of regularity that could represent the perpetual grief that the poetic voice suffers as a result of the unrequited love. However, the irregular stress patterns remind the reader of the disturbed psyche of this poetic voice. Okay, thanks ever so much, folks. Take care. Cheers.